Let's move on now to the big story of the day. This is the far bigger thing, really, the vote in Parliament on assisted dying. It's a massive thing, and the MPs are going to begin debating it soon, whether people with a terminal illness in England and Wales should be allowed to end their lives on their own terms. The laws were proposed by the Labour MP Kim Leadbeater following passionate campaigns from activists. And we'll speak to Esther Rantzen in a few minutes' time. She helped thrust the issue back into the headlines after she was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Should the MPs listen to Esther and give people, in her words, the dignity of choice and not so much shorten their life, but shorten their death? So as I say, I'll speak to her in a moment. Want your views to 0207 862 2222 is the number. So let's just go through what we are looking at today. And essentially, there are two questions here. One we know the answer to and one we don't. So the one we know the answer to is this: what form the assisted dying bill will take. We know this. Here's the MP who I mentioned, backbench MP Kim Leadbeater. Let's have a look at her outside the House of Commons. She's put this thing together very much almost on her own terms. And there are safeguards. And they've stressed them again and again. You've got to be, to end your own life, 18 plus. You've got to be registered with GP for 12 months. Have the mental capacity to take this decision. You've got to be terminally, this is crucial, terminally ill with 6 months or less to live. Have a clear wish, no coercion, nobody forcing you into it, making you feel like you're a burden. You've got to have two, this is where it gets quite bureaucratic. You've got to have 2 declarations of desire, 2 doctors have got to sign off, and a judge, and then there's a 7-day pause for the doctors and a 14-day pause for the judge. So those are the safeguards. People worry it might drift. 2 questions, I said. The second is, what will the result be? And here we don't know the answer. But ITV put something out, and they said they've gone through the MPs. They think 205 in Green are currently in favour. Going into today's vote, 159 against, and then the yellow, 125 undecided. So it looks as if the pros may just shade it, depending on what the undecideds do today. The Justice Secretary's already attacked it. The Health Secretary's already attacked it. They weren't supposed to really speak out. 3 former Tory Prime Ministers don't like it. Ed Miliband says actually he's in favour. Cameron's decided he's in favour. Kemi Badenoch and Diane Abbott worried about safeguards. Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall says she'll vote for it. So up the top of politics, you've got views both ways, and it's just a tremendously serious thing, isn't it, Stella?
It is a very difficult position, and there are nuanced views on this. For me personally, the reason why I'm skeptical about the bill is it may well say that coercion is going to be illegal. Of course, coercion is going to be illegal, but elder abuse is supposed to be illegal in this country more generally, and it's still quite prevalent. And the problem is that elder abuse, most often, it is carried out in an older person's own home. We all know that of the prevalence of elderly abuse in institutions like care home. About a third of staff in these homes at times have admitted to perpetrating some form of abuse, but it's usually carried out by relatives of older people. So I think it is really, really hard as a society when we recognize that the older a person is, when their health and their mind is no longer at a place where they can take care of themselves, they become vulnerable. Mm-hmm. They are dependent on the adults around them like children.
Well, they've got, but surely the safeguards sort that out, Guto, because you've got to have less than 6 months to live, which is a pretty serious terminal situation. And the doctors will look, and the judge will look.
Yeah, and I, not blind to the potential downsides, and in some countries it's become dystopian and hideous, but I think in the end that the right to sort of choose your death and avoid an undignified, excruciating pain, a horrible life, I think that a person in that situation should be allowed and assisted in ending it. And if you turn it on its head, should I be prosecuted for murder if I help somebody who's very close to me, who's in excruciating pain, they're not going to recover, they are going to die, and they're just trying to cut to the chase? I do not think that we should prosecute people for murder for doing something that is ultimately compassionate.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because then quite quickly, what about a friend of yours who has major depression and they've had it for 10 years, they're sick of it, and you say, look, I'm going to leave a revolver on your bedside table.
We're not going to legalise that according
No,
to
but the analogy works for your thing, doesn't it? Because you don't think that's murder.
No, but in my analogy, the person is going to die anyway. They are going to die. And depression may lead you to kill yourself, but you will not die physically of depression.
Because in the Netherlands, we've had a case of a 20-something with depression having assisted death, which has made the whole world go, hang on. We got a poll going on Twitter asking if you back assisted dying. So how would you vote? Legalise it, don't legalise it? This obviously means nothing because it's Twitter and it's just, you know, people just bumping into our question. But these numbers are quite stable because I looked last night and it's sort of basically 2/3 for and 1/3 against. And I think the one thing we can say about that is that it seems that the public have drifted towards it in the last 10, 20 years, and 20 years ago you get a different result. And that may be that we've seen cases where people have been prosecuted for murder or manslaughter because they've simply helped. Okay, do vote. Search for Jeremy Vine on X. We'll see if the results change throughout the show. First, though, your calls on assisted dying and whether MPs should listen to Esther Rantzen and back a change to the law today. 0207 862 2222. So just before we were on air, I spoke on the phone with Esther and asked her first how she was getting on.
Well, I'm between scans, and in my situation, what one gets is scanxiety. So the closer the scan gets, the more one wonders what it's going to reveal. But at the moment, the miracle drug appears to be holding back the spread of the cancer. So thank you, I'm fine.
We can't work out which way this vote is going to go. I don't know if you've got any sense. You're obviously watching it avidly. What do you think this vote is going to be?
I think predictions have been proved to be fallible, have they not? Every time anyone does a survey or a guess on any election or any vote, it always turns out to be wrong. So I've no idea. Jeremy.
It's interesting. You will have seen, though, leaving the MPs aside, that the public have definitely moved, haven't they, in the last 20 years or so?
Yes, although I'm afraid as long as I have been interested in this subject, and I made a program called How to Have a Good Death back in around 2002, I think it was, even then the public were in favour of assisted dying. I think the trouble is that we ordinary people have come across agonising deaths where the symptoms can't be relieved, even with the best palliative care. So we know that there are times when life becomes unbearable, and what you want to do is shorten your death. And that's what this vote is about.
We went through some of the provisions in the bill. It is very tight, and I don't know whether, as things stand at the moment, Esther, you would qualify for an assisted death.
It won't ever apply to me, Jeremy, because the whole process will take about 2 years before it becomes law. And, you know, miracle drug or no miracle drug, I'm very unlikely to have 2 years in me. So I'm afraid Dignitas in Switzerland is the only way I can have an assisted death.
And are you making plans for that?
Not actually at the moment. At the moment, I'm making plans for Christmas. But if the scan turns out to be bad news in the new year, I suppose I'll have to.
So what's your message then to MPs today, Esther?
My message to MPs is this is your choice. I'm not going to say vote one way or the other because I believe in choice. And choice is what this bill is about, giving me the choice to shorten my own death, giving you the same choice. So how you vote is up to your conscience. But obviously for some of us, it's a very, very real and immediate decision. And we're hoping that it goes the right way.
If it doesn't, would you think there's a case for a referendum on it?
Referendums are brilliant, aren't they? They bring people together and they're such a good idea and you get wonderful results. No, thank you. Kind offer, but no, I think.
Thanks, Esther. Lovely to speak to you as always. I send you my love and best wishes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This could dominate the next 3 or 4 years. It's not even a government thing.
No, and in a way it's showing politics at its best, where you have people thinking for themselves, having nuanced arguments, weighing up things, appreciating that it's not black or white. It's going to be messy whichever way it goes. I think that's a good thing. But in the end, as your poll, and I know it's just on Twitter, but I have a sense that the country is ahead of the politicians on this one. And what they're doing is trying to play catch up, but catch up in a serious way, because it's one thing to feel that something should be allowable and actually to legislate for it to be practical and responsible.
What do you think?
I think that it is very, very difficult, and it is very difficult to listen specifically to campaigners on either side and their fears, because on the one side, in favor of the bill, you have people like in Esther's case, who may need to make that choice about assisted dying, about their own selves. On the other side, you have disability campaigners who are also very worried about the potential for abuse. And I understand both cases. And I also understand people who are saying, and this is where I'm coming from, you can put as many safeguards as you want. There are a lot of situations where we put safeguards, and sadly, we are not able to uphold them at all times, especially when it comes, as I said earlier, on elderly abuse.
Gina is in Kent. Hi, Gina.
Hi there. Good morning, all.
What do you think the MPs? Well, what do you want the MPs to do today?
I'm hoping that things will go in favour of the assisted dying bill. Absolutely. I'm a palliative care nurse. I have been for many years, and there's only one way that I would like it to go. Absolutely.
So you want them to vote this through, so we do have assisted dying?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Because a lot of people in palliative care say the opposite. They say the problem is that when you are at the end of your life, we don't have the palliative care to make it easier and gentler, and that the solution is to put the money into hospices, for example. Yeah,
palliative care has come on leaps and bounds even in the last 20 years, and symptom management, symptom control has come on leaps and bounds in a very short space of time. But even the best palliative care, coming from working in hospice myself, even the best palliative care cannot alleviate all suffering. And there, I've encountered people who've had very good deaths, comfortable deaths, kind of the death that you imagine, where you're tucked up in bed, surrounded by your family, pain-free, symptom-free. And then I've encountered the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where people endure excruciating suffering. People who are aware of their suffering, who are mentally aware, who are capacitous, who have an understanding of their disease, but can't do anything about it, who can't take back control. That the biggest thing that people have to deal with when diagnosed with a terminal illness is the loss of control. And I think it's so important to give that back to people, so that that level of suffering can be prevented, because it's the kind of thing, I've seen things that you wouldn't do to an animal. And I fully appreciate the argument about capacity and safeguarding and things like that, for particularly in care homes, as your panelist has mentioned. But the safeguards are so stringent, and capacity assessments are so strict, from my experience. And the slippery slope doesn't exist. There is no precedent in other countries where abuse or safeguarding, where do you know what I mean? There's no
Gina,
precedent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. After the break. Now your calls on whether MPs should back the campaign of Dame Esther Rantzen and support this bill on assisted dying. MPs are debating the issue now. And that's actually a live shot in the House of Commons. Isn't that interesting? On a Friday, well, you'll both know this because you spent a lot of time in Westminster. You never see this on a Friday. And as Guto was saying, maybe this is what... So there's Kim Leadbeater actually proposing the bill. Let's have a listen.
Would not have taken place without the introduction of this bill. It's a long overdue conversation, and I'm very pleased to see it happening. I've met with the Association of Palliative Medicine, Hospice UK, Sue Ryder and Marie Curie, and last week I was delighted to attend the inaugural meeting of the All-Party Group for Hospices. I also attended the...
So she will lay out the background to the bill, why she has proposed it. It's a private member's bill, which means it doesn't come from the government. That means everyone's got a right to vote for or against. The interesting one is Keir Starmer, who has said in the past that he believes it's time, but ever since the bill was printed, he's not said anything. So, and I think he's respecting the process. He thinks it's not his job to say. But so it really is a proper moment, as Guto says, where we see politicians voting on their consciences. Lucy in Stockport, what do you want to happen?
I don't want them to pass the bill. Personally, as much as respect to Labour for Esther Rantzen, I do believe she's been a little bit selfish. She has this great big platform, whereas a lot of people don't. I have stage 4 breast cancer. I was on your show last week. I have treatment every 3 weeks, and I have been for 3.5 years, and I'm very fortunate, still on the first line of treatment. On Tuesday, that was treatment number 58. Treatments cost a lot of money. I think, because when I first started, I was on with it a dose of Taxol, but you can only have 6 of those because of how toxic it is. So I'm assuming now I'm into hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of treatment.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously it's not going to come into play straight away, but further down the line, could they say we've spent too much money on her? We're not spending any more money on her.
Well, I remember you saying this last week to me, and it did make me think. And Lucy, that a number of other people said the suspicion is the government is using this to basically clear difficult cases out of the NHS. But that would be really twisted.
Just last week, our government, not the government, NHS, NICE, couldn't come to an agreement with AstraZeneca for a drug called Enhertu. Now, this drug got standing ovations after trials, at the oncology conferences. This drug got standing ovations for it's the way it's panned out.
Right.
It's available in England, Wales and Northern Ireland for people who are HER2 low, for people who are HER2 positive, but they've said no for it to being available for anybody who's HER2 low.
In Scotland?
Because of cost. But it is available for everybody in Scotland.
So
I
see.
People who are HER2 low went over the border to Scotland, they could have it, but you can't have it here. They're already deciding who lives there.
All right, Lucy, I've got it. Honestly, I've got it, and thank you. And we won't get stuck too much on that particular drug. But you're right. The NHS has got limited funds, and if you're very, very severely ill, maybe there would be a feeling of pressure on you. Shelley's in Newcastle. What do you think? What do you want the MPs to do, Shelley?
I'd like them to vote for it. I've got a couple of points. My first point is people voted that a woman has a choice to have an abortion up to 6 months old, so that woman can abort a child who could be viable if it was born at that age. So if you've got a right to do that, surely a human, it's not going to be loads of people who could think they're going to be in pain, has the right to choose how they finish the end of their life. And like I say, we keep on about animals. Oh, it's kinder to put the animal down, they'll be suffering. I saw my mum suffer at the end. It was basically no water and food. She died. She had to wait for days like that, basically to die. And I thought it was the cruelest thing I had to watch. I thought it was absolutely atrocious, just lying there. There's nothing you can do. No, we're just waiting basically for her to die.
Oh.
And I think it's absolutely appalling the way people die in this country. And I think we need to have a choice the way we end our lives.
Okay,
it probably won't be loads.
Thank you so much. Yvonne in West Sussex, do you agree with Shelley?
A couple of points as well, Jeremy. Good morning, Jeremy and panel.
Morning.
Longer term, sadly, I think it's open to abuse and corruption. I'm really sorry for people that are in this predicament. But my other point is, and I'm sorry to sound insensitive and nobody's mentioned it, I come from an insurance background and I'm wondering, I'd love to know what the life insurance company's take is on this, because effectively you're committing suicide, aren't you?
Well, but why would they take a view? Because you'd never be able to predict a terminal condition, would you? So,
death, you can never ever predict with certainty, can't you? I mean, there was a lady on the news this morning that said someone was in intensive care for 3 months and they were terminal and they lived for another 20 years. I know that's not the norm. I know that.
Yeah.
But I can't see. Like I say, I just think it's open to abuse.
Was it? Yeah. Okay. Point taken about insurance. Thank you. Jill in Manchester. Hi.
Hi.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it should go through. I think what should happen is we should have a donor system like we did, like the organ donor system. We should have the ability to choose to opt in or opt out before you actually get ill, for the likes of people with dementia, because both my parents had dementia. So you could choose, if you get to the stage that they did, where you're sitting in a home for years on end thinking, I don't want to be like that, then you can opt into the system. You can say, well, I want to be considered for it, or I don't. If you don't want to have assisted dying, you can opt out for any illness.
That's an interesting thought, because if you have someone's power of attorney, meaning that they've lost their ability to have agency, is it possible that if this bill goes through, you will effectively be able to kill them? I hate to say it, but because you could take their decision for them to end their life. There are so many, thank you, Jill, for raising that. So many things you've got to work out here. Thanks for all your calls. Later we'll be asking if it's ever okay to